Guys. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Gopal Shenoy, and this presentation is about how exceptional product managers discover unmet customer needs. Now, before I get started, I would like to thank all the sponsors of Product Camp Online. As you can see, there is many companies here. I've used some of the products that are listed here, so I would encourage everyone to try to see if you can attend their Zoom sessions to learn more about their products. So if you have any questions, I would appreciate if you could put them in slido.com. The code is 328230. So that's again 328230. So I will type that in right now, 8230 on slido.com. Okay. And I have it up here so that when the questions come in, I can see them. So very quick introduction about myself. I've been doing product management for 25 years. I am currently director of product management at a startup called Takeoff, where we are building what we call micro-fulfillment centers, which are automated warehouses for grocers to fulfill the rapid increase in online grocery orders that we are seeing. It was already at around 5%, but it has kind of doubled because of COVID. I worked at B2C, B2B startups to high growth companies. I have visited 10 countries to do 500 plus customer interviews. The products that we created, the team created, generated anywhere from $10 million to $300 million. And we had customers from tens to thousands to millions being on the B2C side at care.com. And here are some of the companies I worked at. So the success of this presentation would be if you walk away with a solid understanding as to how to discover unmet customer needs. And I will cover do's and don'ts as to how you're doing it and how to act on what you learn. Now, after the presentation, you may feel that, my God, the tips that Gopal talked about, the do's and don'ts, are just common sense. Yes, they are. And I'll tell you the story. I was asked by one of my former colleagues, who was a founder of a company called Onshape, and they asked me to do some research for their market research as to why consumer products fail. And this was 2 years back. And what was very interesting, I interviewed about 10 consumer companies, and the number one reason that they said is, actually, we did not understand the customer needs. That was shocking to me because the stuff that I heard when I used to work at SolidWorks in 1990s to 2000, the first decade of 2000, I was hearing the same things over and over again when I did this research 2 years back. So which tells me that though some of this may appear as common sense, there are lots and lots of people still not doing it because of which products fail. Before we get started on how to find these customer needs, I want to make sure that I define the role of a product manager. A product management role is actually a strategic and business role that helps your employer to find compelling, competitive, and profitable solutions to market problems. And I want to take 30 seconds each on each one of these words. Let's talk about market problems. Market problems don't reside here. They don't reside in charts and fancy looking graphs. They don't reside in internal Zoom meetings that all of us have these days. Or when we used to work in the offices, they don't reside in the conference rooms either. Now, I understand that as part of COVID means we are restricted in terms of how we can engage with our customers, our prospects, or users. But the message here is market problems reside outside your offices. They reside where your target customers hang out. So if you're in consumer creating B2C products, you need to find out where your consumers, where your target customers hang out. If you're building B2B products for schools, you need to be in classrooms because that's where your target customers are. They could be teachers, they could be the administrators, they could be the parents, they could be the children. And if you're building products for pharma, you have to go and hang out where the lab technicians might be living. If you're building things for construction, go and spend time at a construction site because that's where your target customers hang out. Compelling. This is extremely important. There are tons and tons of customer problems. Your customers will say they have a lot of problems, but all of us do. But you need to find out what problems are painful enough that customers will open their wallets to pay for a solution. That is what is a compelling problem to solve. Whatever you come up with as a solution has to be competitive so that they'll select your solution over your competition. There is nothing called a large market with no competition, because even if you are the first mover, that is going to be a short-lived thing. Because if it's a large market, you will attract more competitors. If you become successful as the first mover, you will attract competitors. There's nothing called a large market with no competition. Whenever I hear that, that's a fallacy. And of course, if you're running a business, you need to, at some point in time, become profitable. It is fine to invest back in the business to grow and take on the losses, but at some point in time, you will have to be profitable. So you got to keep that in mind. So you will see different business models, whether it is freemium models, whether it's free trial, ways to get users into the sales funnel such that eventually you can sell them a product or a service that solves one of their compelling problems so that they will be willing to open their wallet and pay you money. So that is what a product manager's role is. Product manager is not equal to an agile expert. Unfortunately, there's a ton of this going on. Steve Johnson talked about it yesterday during the panel discussion. It is not about Jira. It's not about stories. It's not about story points. It's not about tasks and all that. All that is needed as part of a product development process. Now, agile actually is actually an engineering methodology. It's not a product management methodology. Product managers have to find these compelling, competitive, and profitable solutions to market problems. How you solve for those, how you build a solution to those problems is what Agile allows you to do. Agile allows you to quickly develop prototypes or MVPs to get it into the market and get feedback. So product manager being an Agile expert, Marty Kagan wrote about what he calls the CSPO pathology. I think that was his latest article. He's absolutely right. It's fine to go and get CSPO training or certified Scrum product owner training, but that does not make you an exceptional product manager. 80% of new products fail. As I said, when I interviewed those 10 consumer companies, and some of them are brands you would know, but they still said that they failed because they did not take enough time to deeply understand the customer problems. Your product has to be relevant to somebody's life. It has to be solving a painful enough problem such that they'll open their wallets to pay you money. So let's talk about 5 things absolutely not to do to discover these unmet customer needs. Now, when I say unmet, it's because customers often will tell you about some solutions. That actually hides the underlying problem. Because as I said, customers have a lot of problems. You're trying to find out which are the compelling problems that they're willing to pay you money to solve. So let's talk about how to find those out. It's not always obvious. You can ask the wrong questions and get answers that could completely mislead you. Do not build products based on ideas in your office. Ideas are fine. Ideas are normally solutions. Instead, you need to find out what the problems are. Forget about the solutions. Solutions you can come up with working with all of your internal stakeholders. But don't just build products based on ideas in your office. Yes, there are examples. For example, Instacart. I think the founder was an engineer at Amazon. He built it for his own use, and then he started scaling it up. Yes, there are lots of successes like that. What I'm also trying to tell you is going and doing these customer discovery calls does not guarantee product success. What it does is increases the probability of product success. If you don't do it, it almost guarantees that the product would fail. There are always exceptions, because the thing is, I keep getting told, oh, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg talked to users about Facebook and so on. Yes, there are those things. It means people win lottery tickets as well. But if you want to take that chance, the chance and probability of success drastically goes down. And why is this a bad idea? People say, I used to do this when I used to be a designer or when I used to be an engineer 3 years back. It makes an assumption that nothing has changed. Now, there is never a state where you know all about your customers, because customer needs keep changing. And not because they changed their mind. There could be so many external factors. Look at what happened last year because of COVID. Nobody predicted it. Customer needs completely changed, right? The way you work completely changed. So you need to always keep a pulse on the customer needs. And yes, you should worry about competition, but I would spend more time with customers than looking at what competition is doing, because you never know how much time they are spending. They could be building products based on the ideas in their office. I think, when somebody says I think, it's an opinion. It could be a hypothesis, but it's not being tested. It's not a data-driven fact. If somebody says I think, always say, okay, that's a good hypothesis, or unless you have some data to back it up. Because data trumps opinions. Second thing not to do, visit just the same friendly customers you have over and over and over again. Now, it is quite possible that if you are in the enterprise space and in your vertical, there could be maybe 20 customers that would buy, and maybe 12 of them are already your customers. In which case, yes, you will have to listen to their needs because it's a limited pool. However, the users who use your products could be changing. Even at those companies, the processes that they use could be changing. The workflows that they use could be changing. They may have brought in another system, another solution that may have an impact on the ecosystem in which your product works. So don't just visit a couple of friendly customers, because these friendly customers will tell you what you want to hear because of the relationships you have, gets you to build what they want, but it may not be applicable to the broader market. Whenever I go on customer discovery calls, one of the things that I tell them, tell whoever I'm interviewing is, please do not sugarcoat anything to me. I don't care if you want to rip apart my product and say that these features are the most terrible things that you could have put in, because I'm in a position to take that feedback, aggregate it with the feedback that we receive from other customers, and make it change. If you do not tell me your pain points, you will not put me in a position to help you, to make a change to help you. I do not guarantee that your feedback will result in product features or changes in pricing or whatever else. We will use it as data points and aggregate it with other customers. I make that very clear. The next thing, ask customers leading questions. Do you think feature X is a good idea? I had a product manager who worked with me once who came back and said, we should build X. I said, why? I was at a bar and I have buddies and I asked them, what do you think about this? And they said, it's a great idea. The problem with this is when you ask these questions, people have not even thought about it. They will give you an instantaneous reaction. If Microsoft or Google or whoever, even HubSpot or whoever comes and asks me, if I'm one of the target customers, what do you think of this? I've not given it enough thought. What is in it for me to say, yes, I like it? My skin is not in the game. Now, if I say no, without giving it much thought, it could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I would be missing out on an opportunity. I have no skin in the game. Worst case, I will just not use the feature. So don't ask customers leading questions and about features and products and so on. And I'll get to that in a second as to why that is a bad idea. Ask customers convoluted questions. Keep it extremely simple. If X equals Y and Y equals Z and we build blah, 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 will it work for you? No, they're not thinking about your product. They're not thinking about the features, your product features. The only thing that keeps them awake is their business problems, not your product. Your product is a means to an end, and the end always is about solving their business problems. Start solving the problem just based on customer interviews. Now, if you're building an MVP, if you have limited audiences, of course, you can create mockups and all that and put it in front of it. But oftentimes you have to, unless you have a limited set of customers, you have to back up your qualitative research with some quantitative research. So how do we go about discovering those unmet needs? Don't think that being a sales closer or troubleshooter with customer support is the way to discover unmet customer needs, because your role when you're a sales closer is to close the sale, is to get around sales objections. If you're troubleshooting it, it's time sensitive, you're looking for workarounds. It's fine to jot that down as a problem that the customers have. More times you're called to troubleshoot a problem, more times you're called to find workarounds, yes. But what you want to do is say that you're playing the role of an explorer. Invite engineers and designers to participate in this exploration. The reason is when you come back, if you don't do it, and let's say you come back and say, this is what I heard, you want to make sure it's not perceived as, let's say, my opinion. They have heard. They would also ask questions from a different point of view than you. Because engineers think about how could I solve this problem? Designers are thinking about what is the user experience I could provide. You're thinking about, is this problem worth solving? How much, what is the business impact? Or how does this fit into a strategic view of our company and so on and so forth. So having those different points of view is excellent. Now, one of the things the Zoom, the situation we live in has helped is it becomes very easy for engineers and designers to join these conversations, because all it means is click of a button and you're in a meeting talking to the customer. So take advantage of that. It's not that you have to get into the car or fly out. Now, the good thing about driving to the customer site or flying out is it allows you to build a social bond with your product development team. And they also get to visit customers and see the environment in which the customers live or how your product operates. Number two, spend 10 times more time deeply understanding customer problems than designing solutions. Spend 10 times here and go deep. Don't just take what the customer tells you as the problem. Keep asking why, keep asking why. And the way I make customers comfortable with this is I say, listen, I'm going to ask you right at the beginning. I tell them, I probably will ask you more questions, or I will ask you, can you tell me more? And why do you think that way? Not because I'm trying to be defensive. I want to make sure I understand the problem you're having in depth. So I may be asking many whys. So you set the expectations with customers. Everybody wants to jump to the solution space. You know why? Because it makes us, it's the creative aspect. All of us want to solve problems. All of us want to be creative. So we naturally jump straight into this. If you don't deeply, deeply understand this problem, you could be solving the wrong thing. It's very hard. It's not easier said than done. But I would say, keep asking why. Tell me what is the problem we're trying to solve, and is that problem compelling enough that the customers would buy? Features. Solution space is all about features. Third-party devices, big data, mobile applications. Oh, do I need to have voice support using Alexa, smartphone, cloud, and so on and so forth? Customers live in the problem space. They are thinking about, how do I compete against Amazon? Or how do I reduce my warranty returns? How can we retain and hire great talent? How do I reduce my customer support costs? Depending on which space your product belongs, means if you're building some warehouse software, this might be a question that would be relevant to your customers. But the key thing is, your customers are not thinking about features. They are thinking about their problems. And the reason they hire you is to solve these problems and through building out features. Okay. Create a discussion guide of open-ended questions focused on the problem space. Now, don't ask open-ended questions. I mean, don't ask closed questions, just directed questions, but just tell me more about your business. What are the challenges you have? Don't ask questions that could result in a yes or a no. Do you go to the gym? Yes or a no. Instead, how often do you go to the gym? And can you help me? Can you walk me through the last time you went to the gym? Now, that's an open-ended question. Because if you ask your customers, do you do X? Oftentimes, they might tell you the ideal case scenario. But instead, if you focus on questions like, can you tell me your last project and how did it go? Were there any things that did not go as planned? What ended up to be much harder than it should be? Now we are asking them to reflect on an experience that they have had. Now, was that last project very typical? If not, what was different in the other projects? You're trying to find out if that last project was an exception or not. Find out what is costing them because of all these issues. That kind of gives you an inkling if this is a compelling problem for you to solve. Or what if this problem is not solved going forward, right? If they say it's okay, we'll live with it. Maybe it's not important enough. Maybe you have to dig deeper into it. So let me give you an example. This was one of the questions that I asked when I was doing an interview while I was at Toast. Imagine you're driving and want to know how the restaurant is performing. We were doing research on analytics and reports that restaurant owners may need. What pieces of data would you like to know right there and then? Because we put a scenario, everybody drives, everybody is away from the restaurant. What would they like to know? And they said, we had never thought about this, that they wanted to see how backed up the kitchen was. We were thinking they want to know what sales, revenues, and how does the sales compare to the previous thing. What they said is, I want to know how backed up the kitchen is, because if the kitchen is backed up, that means that the customer experience, the diner experience is going to be impacted. I can get more people into the kitchen. So they were all focused on providing a great diner experience. Understand how they solve the problems today. Oftentimes, your biggest competition is the status quo. Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, Post-it notes. Those are all things people use to solve the problem. Validate that the problem is painful enough. Willingness to pay. Questions to ask. Can you walk me through your current workflow? What solutions have you tried to solve these problems? How are those solutions working? What would it take to switch if a better solution is available? That tells you how much inertia there might be. Who pays for the current solution? Is there a budget? Who is most impacted by these problems? So that gives you an inkling of the decision makers, right? So here are some of the questions. When we found out about that restaurant owner experience, what they were using was a security camera that was pointed towards either the kitchen display system or where you stick the tab of what the orders are. That is how they were solving the problem, because security cameras often have mobile apps. And last thing I want to say is, oftentimes customers will not tell you stuff, and this is the benefit of visiting the customers where they live, observe the unspoken and ask questions. Nobody's going to tell you that this is the way I carry my groceries, unload the groceries from the car and carry it into the house. Or this is where I live. Or you see this on a manufacturing floor, lots of red lines. Now you say, can you tell me what's going on here? Right? It allows you to empathize and understand the world in which your customers live. How many customers? 5 to 12 customers, which should give you about 70% of the needs. You can do 20, but it starts plateauing. So don't think that you have to go and visit tons of customers. But what I would tell you is make it a habit to visit customers. If you can talk to 2 or 3 customers a week, or even 1 customer a week, or 2 to 3 a month, get started. There's no harm. How do you find them? Tons of places. I start with LinkedIn. I look at Quora. B2C, friends, family, coffee shops, existing customers, my LinkedIn network, and all sorts of things. There is no dearth of finding potential customers, no matter which vertical you're in. Words of caution. Stay away from prospects in the sales funnel, because if you lose the sale, always the product manager gets blamed because the customer said, can you do X? And you, being the product manager, being the explorer, saying, no, not really. And that could blow the sale and you get blamed. Qualitative research is necessary, but if you're doing something that is high risk, follow it up with quantitative research. Surveys using a larger set of customers before you act. 5 takeaways. Get out of the building. Focus only on the painful problems that the customers will pay for you to solve. Qualitative research with 5 to 12 customers to deeply understand problems, empathize with them. Share the insights with your team. Don't think that just because you did customer visits, that's good enough. There are lots of tools where you can record these things. Order.ai is something we use quite a bit now that we do these things online. It gives you a transcript. It gives you the audio recording. When we do presentations on usability sessions or user research, we include quotes. We even include a link to the audio, and Order.ai is a product that I would highly recommend. And frequently validate with customers. If you remember only one thing, remember this. No one in your office will ever open their wallets to buy your products. Folks who do live outside your office. So get out of the building. Now, in the times we live in, yes, we are coming back to normal, in the US at least, not in every country. It is perfectly fine to talk to customers on the phone, over Zoom, and so on. When I showed that Zoom image, that was a Zoom of internal stakeholders. That's what I was trying to get to. Don't listen to them. It's perfectly fine to do Zoom or phone calls or whatever with real users who have the problems that you want to solve. That's it. My email is here, and I used to blog. I still have a ton of content at productmanagementtips.com. So thank you so much. And I think, are we out of questions?
Yeah, there are 2 comments and 2 questions in Slido.
Okay. Where was the question? Do you know the question, Peter? I don't know. None of the questions showed up on Slido. Do you see the questions? That's weird. Let me refresh my screen. Huh. That's weird. Can you read the questions if you have time?
Yeah. The first one's from Keith Morneau. Customer surveys have very low conversion completion rates. Any suggestions other than site visits that might help?
Yes. If you get a 2% conversion rate on on surveys, you have had a good survey. I would try personal notes to send out the survey, even if you get 20 data points. Means support can help you. Means the thing is, or find prospective customers. You can use LinkedIn and find people who might be working at employers that are not at companies that are not your customers yet. Write them a personal email and say, would you mind taking 5 minutes to write the survey? I don't like to pay people to take the survey because I think it creates a bias, because people fill out the survey just to get the Amazon gift card or whatever.